All right. It says we are live. Welcome to another episode of Monday Night Live on the 10 Horse Monty YouTube channel. Got Jonathan over here. He missed last week. Did you get your washer figured out?
No,
You didn't.
but I got a temporary. So that washer is, and I hate to say this, but that washer is like 7 or 8 years old, maybe a little bit older than that, somewhere in that neighborhood. So they don't build them like they used to, right? I mean, all that stuff now is just disposable, and I hate that.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember growing up with my grandma and grandpa and mom and dad. That washer, I think mom and dad just got rid of their washer a couple, probably when we got our new one, they finally got a new one as well. And that one I remember for probably 25 years.
Yeah.
Never an issue with it.
Yeah.
And this one, we got a washer and dryer set for our wedding, right before our wedding. And the washer has leaked on us twice. Cannot figure out where it's coming from. I literally ran a cycle the other night when I was at home, had it pulled out, elevated, ran a cycle without any spin, and nothing dripped out of the bottom of it. Like, where in the world is this water coming from? And then our dryer just like turns on randomly by itself if the door's shut.
So it's haunted. You have a
Yeah,
haunted
it's
dryer?
a haunted dryer for sure, 100%. But no, I put a pan underneath it. So if it does leak, I don't have to worry. It's going to stay in the pan. It's not going to go in my basement or anything
that
like that.
green,
So,
that ugly green avocado looking refrigerator that's on the other side of the basement
works perfect.
That's my grandma's refrigerator from like the 70s.
And it still works.
It still works.
Perfect.
It still works.
Yeah, I've got a 1957 Frigidaire in my car shop. It works like a dream.
Yep.
Original Freon.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Mom and dad have one in their basement that's probably pushes the age of yours in the other room back here. And it's one of the handle that you pull on, and it latches, and
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah.
And then the freezer was, about that big.
Oh yeah, about the size of an ice tray.
Exactly. So, and it's still working perfectly.
Yeah.
Absolutely perfectly. Not a thing
It doesn't
wrong
make
with
any noise, and it'll freeze your water if you put it in there. Want to?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. But you got to defrost those, which folks don't know what defrosting is anymore. But you have to defrost that one.
Yeah, it's true.
So.
Yeah, I need to I got a freezer in there that needs defrosting. My surface, my space of storage space is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So that's on the agenda.
But no, so not fixed, but I am back. Everybody's happy and healthy at home.
Good.
Which is always a plus. So unfortunately though, I'm 5 weeks without the boat being wet.
Yeah. You got to be going through withdrawal.
I went down to the pond yesterday and did a little crappie fishing. I think we caught 11 or 12 crappie yesterday. It's pretty slow, and found out I should have went to the lake and put the live scope hurt into them. So
yeah, we'll talk later about that then.
Yeah.
So on the other end is Gayle Julian there. How's it going, man?
I'm doing great. I appreciate y'all having me on this evening.
Yeah, it's great to have you on. I'm glad you took some time out of your busy schedule to jump on here for a little while and talk some fishing. So I always like to start out by just getting a little bit of background. Like, you from the Arkansas area? Were you born and raised there, or what's your background story?
I've been in the Ozarks for almost the entirety of my life. I actually live in Missouri. Our factory is in, Mountain Home, Arkansas, Midway, between Bass Cat and Triton Boats in the industrial park there, Midway. So, but yeah, I've been here since I was 7 years old, which has been a minute or two. So, yeah, I love the Ozarks.
Yeah, it's beautiful down there. That's probably, if I had my choice, I think I would live in that area, just because there's so many opportunities. You got all the boat dealerships.
Yep.
You got all the beautiful lakes down there. You got the Ozark Mountains, just hunting, fishing, anything you could want to do is right there in that one little area.
Yeah, we've got it all. If you love the outdoors, this is a pretty hard place to beat. 4 Seasons and, the White River Arm and the Norfolk Arm, and got the Buffalo and Crooked Creek and Bryant Creek. There's just a lot of water, a lot of fishing, a lot of outdoor activities here for sure.
Yeah, I used to make an annual trek down there to fish on the downside of Bull Shoals Dam on the White River. We go trout fishing usually we tried to time it around a shad kill. You know, if there was a
Right.
really cold winter, we'd try to get down there, and that was typically like in February. But
February, yeah.
regardless, we'd go down there, and it's phenomenal fishing down there. So
Yeah.
you got the bass fishing, the panfish fishing, the walleye, and then you got on the other side of the dam there, you got just phenomenal trout fishing. So it's
Yeah. We're really blessed in this part of the country. We do have most all the major boat brands at one time or another were all made here, and a lot of them still are. People joke, you know, we have a fiberglass mine here. That's why they're all here. But
yeah.
what we do have in this part of the country is a tremendous amount of ingenuity, craftsmen, people that know how to do things and how to design and build things. So we're really, really fortunate in that way too.
So what do you think the first boat manufacturer was in that area? Was it Ranger, or was there something before Ranger that was down in that area?
Bass Cat and Ranger started pretty close at the same time. Champion started sometime after that, but I think Ranger had a little bit of a head start on Bass Cat. It was one way or the other, but I think Ranger was a little bit ahead. So, but yeah, I mean, we've had Champion, Hawk, Cobra, Viper. All those boats were all part of that iteration. And then literally within 200 yards of my factory is Triton to the north and Bass Cat to the south, 200 yards each way.
Oh, wow.
And then you got Vexus down there too, don't you?
Vexus is about 15 minutes to the west, as is Ranger.
So why do you think all those manufacturers decide to set up shop in that area right in there?
I don't know. I really think just there's something about Ozark Ingenuity, right? And I think that this area here is, it's pretty rugged. It's mountains and hill farms and things like that. A little bit of valleys, but I think that the people that live here always had a knack for being able to do things and kind of think outside the box. Sometimes because back years ago was just to survive, and so they say that necessity is the mother of invention, right?
Right.
And so I think just a lot of ingenuity, and I really can't explain it any other way. It's just if you take a 100-mile radius of Mountain Home, it encompasses almost everything in the outdoor world. You've got two of the largest retailers in the world within 100 miles of here, right? And they got their start, one in Bentonville and one in Springfield, right? And so it's just, I don't know. There's just a lot that goes on here. What happens in this area has wide-reaching effects, I always say.
So you're talking Walmart and Bass Pro Shops, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like in music. There are areas, they're like musical hubs where it seems like a lot of musicians move to a certain area, and it's just this big melting pot of ingenuity, like you said, or talent, and they just kind of all mingle, and all these great things come out of like a small little area. It's very
kind of the Muscle Shoals of the
exactly
of the fishing industry and things right here,
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah.
See, the business side of me says it's just centrally located in the country, and it's easy to ship boats to the East Coast. It's easy to ship boats to the West Coast. Why do you think Walmart's located in Arkansas? Is everything can?
I'd say that's part of it.
Part of it is centrally located, and Walmart goods are a lot easier to ship than boats. So,
well, it's true. Except if you've ever tried to get to Northwest Arkansas or North Central Arkansas,
it's a pain in the rear.
You can't hardly get here, right? It's hard to get here, but it's almost, once you're here, it's almost impossible to leave too. So that's the good part of it. But yeah, there's I don't know. I just attribute it back to what it took for these guys to make a living back in the day, right? And it was a hard way of life. But we have Bull Shoals Dam and North Fork Dam. Most of the guys that were in the boating world were a part of engineering, or not really engineering, but maybe working as part of the crew on the dams when they were built in this part of the country. And so the people that were, a lot of people came here for that reason. A lot of people that were here, ended up working on that. So once you have dams, you have the river systems, and then, pretty soon, you needed trout boats and things like that below the river, below the dams. I don't know. That's just my opinion. I think that it's just the ingenuity here is really tremendous.
I think I can't remember if it was you I was talking with or if it was Dale, but when I was down there fishing with Dale Colvin on Bull Shoals, we put in at Bull Shoals. What is it? Dock, the Bull Shoals dock.
Yeah,
I think it's called
Bull
the boat
Shoals
ramp.
dock. Yeah.
And we fished the creek. I think it's called, I want to say Little Sisters. Is it right across from there?
Yeah. You've got
Okay.
Little Sister and Jimmy Creek and that all right there.
And it was either you or him that was telling me to drive by land. It would take like 40 something minutes just to get on the other side because it's so remote around Bull Shoals. And I kind of like that.
Yeah. Well, it is. It's very remote. It's if you went into Big Sister, literally from when you idle out of the buoys of Bull Shoals boat dock and you run to the mouth of Big Sister, it would take you a minute in a bass boat, right? To get there by land would take you probably an hour and 25 minutes.
Holy cow.
To get there. And you would think you were never going to arrive, but you would see some awfully gorgeous country on the way, but you would wonder how anybody ever found their way down there. But there's beautiful homes and resorts and all that on there. But it's a 1 minute boat ride and an hour and 45 minute drive, whichever way you want to go.
It's crazy.
So it's kind of that way everywhere.
There's a lot of places like that, right? I mean, Kentucky Lake's like that.
Yeah.
To get from one side to the other, you can see it, but you can't.
They have bridges, though.
Yes.
That's true.
Very true. Very true.
Yeah. We only have one bridge. So
do they do tours of say Bull Shoals Dam if you wanted to go check that out?
They used to before 9/11. I'm not sure they still do.
Okay. Because I've watched some documentaries on not necessarily Bull Shoals, but maybe Hoover Dam or some of those bigger dams, and they're inside, and you go outside and look at where they're at on the inside, and man, I don't know if I could do it. I mean,
right.
There's a lot of water above you.
Yeah, you couldn't be claustrophobic and do it.
Yeah.
As long as you don't know, right?
Right.
It's like being in a cave. I mean,
as long as the lights are on, you're okay.
Right. Hey, I want to give a shout out to Mr. Doug Cheatham.
Yeah, Doug and
they put a hurting on him yesterday.
Yeah, they caught 29.75 pounds on Wapapello, 5 fish. And I talked to Doug last night, and he told me the story, and it was an unfortunate thing that went fortunately. They spun a prop. Spun a hub. No, actually, they lost an ear on their prop.
Okay.
And they couldn't move around. They put it at the dam, so I want to say they were like 8 miles away from the dam. They slung an ear, so they couldn't bounce around like they had planned on. Their first spot, there was somebody on it. They idled up to the second spot, there was somebody on it, and they settled on a spot that actually I got to fish with Doug, a little sneaky spot, and they whacked them in like 30 minutes right there. But there were storms moving in, and they're 8, 9, 10 miles away. I don't know. I can't remember how far it was, Doug, but I apologize for that. But they were a pretty long way, several hours to idle that far.
Right.
So they've got 30 pounds of bass.
And can't go anywhere.
And long story short, I can't remember who it was. I think
Jake
it was
Harris and TC Jennings.
Yeah, TC Jennings. They jumped in the boat with them, transferred their fish, and they weighed in at like 11 o'clock or 11:30. Wow. They were done.
Wow.
So
amazing.
Yeah, you just never know. It was a bad fortune, and it turned out that it kind of reminds me of the Jordan Lee Classic when his motor went bad and he idled under that bridge and just camped out on that point and won the Classic there. They were kind of limited to where they can go, and some things happen for a reason.
Yeah,
and absolutely. That can be a learning experience for all of us, right? Like just because we can run around doesn't mean we have to run around all day. But it's a lot of fun to pin it all the way to Florida and run around the lake. So
Yep.
Let me see who else we got on here. Rob Rixford says, hello, Gayle.
Hey, Rob, I appreciate the ad you done today, too. Awesome work, buddy.
Yeah. Winning Edge Fishing, guys. Anybody that's on here that needs any kind of advertising on social media, definitely check him out because he does a really, really good job. Really great guy and does really good work. So we are going to be doing a giveaway. And the way the giveaway works, if you're not familiar with that process, is sometime during the stream, we will make a reference to a Sasquatch. And at that time, guess a number between 1 and 200. Gayle's already given us a number. We got it written down here. And whoever guesses that number is going to win a Jewel Bait Company prize package. And he's throwing in some spinner baits. And there's a reason. Maybe we'll get into that a little bit later. But you're going to win a nice prize package a little bit later. So keep your ears peeled for that. Yep. Dreams do come true for sure. And if you got any questions, feel free to ask anything you want. It's kind of an open forum, and we're going to start diving into some of these topics that I've written down. I kind of wanted to touch, I know there was a Ozark Mountain Team Trail Derby on Bull Shoals.
Yeah.
I think this weekend. And then I know you guys have been fishing that, and you guys won one of those like in March. Is that right?
Yeah, we won the grand tournament, the first one of the year. Didn't do so well. We had the fish found on Lake of the Ozarks, busted a trolling motor, had some other issues. So we were kind of left adrift for most of the day, and we just ended up being able to catch one keeper there. Table Rock, we had a limit, middle of the pack kind of thing, and same way on Bull Shoals. It's one of those things you always need at least one good fish to really be able to move way up. And this time of year, it's there's a lot of strings stacked from 12.5 to 14 pounds. So one good one does a lot, right now. So, but fishing's good on Bull. The water level is about 28 feet up from pool right now, I think, maybe 29, somewhere along in there. So I went across the dam earlier this evening, and it looked like we've got about another 4 feet of water before it gets up into the hardwoods, looked like. And that makes it a little more of a challenge. But, we're getting used to high water here and learning how to fish it. And now when the water's, down to normal, we feel like they've drained the lake on us, So it's, you just get used to it.
I was going to say anything above 20 seems like normal pool now, doesn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. And, but, that's, these lakes were built for that purpose. We forget that as sportsmen sometimes. We think it was built for our purpose, and that's to go fishing and boating and that sort of thing. But it was built to, for flood control, and it does a really good job at that. And, we just forget about that sometimes.
Yeah, it seems like it's not affecting the spawn as much as it can on other lakes. I know Kentucky Lake, they've always had a problem with the TVA raising and lowering the water during April and May, and it's caused several years of non-productive spawn. They've lost several year classes of fish because of that. The TVA kind of jacking with the water levels, and then you throw in the Asian carp and the lack of shad and the grass being gone, and it really hurt that lake. It's starting to come back, but I know a lot of people complain about they just wish the TVA would keep at least. I was talking to somebody the other day. It's like if they could just keep it steady for 3 weeks or 2 weeks, maybe 2 weeks in May, just let those bass get up there, drop their eggs, let the fry grow up and get off the bank.
Yeah.
But rain comes when it comes. You can't control it.
When it comes. Right now, we've got fish that have spawned from a lake level of probably, I'd say where the fish actually spawned at was probably about 655. And now they're spawning. We've seen some fish making beds Saturday, and we're at 687.
Oh, wow.
So fortunately, our water here is really clear in most places. And so, we're hopeful that, eggs that are down there 20 feet deep will still, mature. But we've had high water years for 8 of the last 11 or something like that, 9 out of 11. And, but our fisheries are in really good shape. The spawns have been good. The high water has helped the fishery.
Yeah, that's Mother Nature takes care of herself. That's why the fish come in waves, multiple waves. They don't all come in at one time. You got 4 or 5 different waves a lot of times. Yep. Sometimes they start in March, April, May, June, and I mean last year we saw some fish in July that had bloody tails. So
Yeah.
that's Mother Nature's way of making sure that everything's not high and dry.
It's done.
Well, and a lot of it, I think, is that evolutionary factor too. I mean, fish are going to learn to spawn a little bit deeper and be able to survive with
Fluctuating lakes,
fluctuating waters. Yeah,
yeah.
Like you said, Mother Nature will run its course and solve all of the issues that we think we face as fishermen, which, in the grand scheme of things, probably aren't that big of issues.
Right.
Jim said his first bass boat was a 75, and I used to say Quachita, but it's Washita. 75 Washita. I think I had my first glass boat was I don't know the year, but it was an old 17.5-foot Monarch with an inline 115. It was one of those really tall, skinny 115s, and you had to make sure that it was completely horizontal when you started it, or it wouldn't start. I don't know exactly the way, the reasoning, but if it was trimmed up, it wouldn't start. It had to be perfectly flat, or it would not start.
Yeah, you had to know the combination, or you'd never get them started. You had to check it so many times and fast idle it, and if you got those things out of sequence, you might be sitting there for a while.
I had
uptight.
I had a 10-horse Mariner that was like that, but it wouldn't start in July when it was nice and warm out. Carbureted motor, you think it would start? It was my duck hunting motor. 7 degrees, froze up. You had to poke a knife or a nail up into the hole to get it to pee, and it'd be 7 degrees outside, and I could pull on it one time and it'd start and run like a top. Go over to the lake in July and try to put it on a little John boat, and you'd be pulling for an hour.
That's funny.
Here's a question from Tom. It says, is Gayle the G in K and G?
Oh, that's good. That's a good question, Tom. Actually, KG Enterprise was started by two gentlemen, Ken Kramer and Ed Gregory. So that's where the K and the G came from. About 34 years ago, they started about the same time we did, but that's where that came from. And then I bought those partners out, over the course of time, and now KG is mine. So, but no, it came from those two gentlemen that had the foresight to do what they did and how they did it back in the day, and got our manufacturing on the right track early on.
So we talked a little bit about KG Manufacturing or Enterprises earlier when I was talking to you on the phone. Can you touch a little bit more on that, and kind of just for the folks at home that don't know what that's all about, can you kind of dive into that?
Yeah, most people don't know this, and KG, everybody is, or most people are familiar with Jewel Bait Company. We've been around the same amount of time KG has, and KG has actually done all of our manufacturing for us since we got started. So we've had a relationship with KG since the beginning. KG is an OEM manufacturer, so we build things for other companies, other well-known, and some of the largest in the world, right? And so we do such things, and I'll touch on a few of those that I know people don't know, that we do it for, don't care that we mention it. We built all the War Eagle spinner baits that have ever been built, War Eagle spoons, shaky heads. We built all the Mustang grip pin hooks that originally started as a project they were doing in China, and they couldn't get enough of those produced there because of the way they were doing it. So we came up with a way to do it, and so we built all of those. We have about 25 or 30 companies that we build things for, besides Jewel and those that I mentioned. So we have a long history of manufacturing, and we are actually the manufacturer. There are a lot of companies that are just a brand, and they'll have somebody like KG do the manufacturing for them, and then they concentrate on the sales and marketing, side of things. And so, we have you guys need to come down sometime. I'll show you, or come over, I guess, actually, from where you're at, and I'll show you what we do and how we do it. I think you'll be impressed and amazed at what we do and how we go about things. It's different than anybody else in the industry. Most everybody in the fishing industry in the United States, spin casts using silicone molds and things like that. We don't do that. We use aircraft grade billet, and we have a milling center and a design center where we design everything on CAD and then transfer it to a milling center, and we actually build, billet molds. So everything's very, very repeatable, very accurate.
So your start to finish products going out the door from
Yes.
design to ready made for sale.
Yes. Yes. We do it all.
So I think I just got another reason to go down to Mountain Home area.
Yeah.
Not only the fishing, but I definitely would like to check out that
Yeah.
facility.
Yeah, you need to see sometime what we do. We have a lot of automated things that we've built. So all the machinery that you see at KG has been built by the original partners and us through the last 35 years. And so we have conveyors and automated spray and powder coat and casting and things, and we've built all those things. And so people don't, when they see it, they don't really expect to see what they see. Our facility is very clean. Floors are very clean. Facilities clean, very organized. It's not filthy. It's like walking into I've heard we've had some of the guys that Ranger, when they toured said, looks more like a hospital floor than it does a factory. So everything's very clean and orderly and well done.
It has to be to run an efficient business. I mean,
it does these days, especially to be a 35-year-old manufacturing company building fishing tackle in the United States. Back in the day, up until the 90s, most of the fishing tackle was made in America. And then over the course of time, it started going to China and things. And then from the late 90s through, 2000s, it was a gold rush, I guess, to China to have everything produced. But we managed to, endure those times. And, but it's because of our quality and our attention to detail that is really second to none.
We have got several really cool questions on here, so I'm just going to start kind of bringing them up here.
Sure.
Jim says, Jewel is one of the few companies that uses a O'Shaughnessy or sprout bend hook. Can Gayle speak on that a little?
Yeah, I can, Jim. Thank you. That's a good question. So Jewel, about every hook that Jewel uses is a custom built hook. We design it and have our hook manufacturers build it for us to our specifications. And the reason we use that Spro or O'Shaughnessy style is because they hold fish better. I've told this story before. It's kind of hard to imagine, but if you think about it, if somebody were going to hold you by your belt with a hook and they were going to dangle you over a 30-story building, from the top of a 30-story building, would you rather have that as a hook like was on a chain? Would you rather be hooked with just a big round hook, right? And most people say, well, I'd like to have that one that's that tighter bend, because I think I'd be held a little better, right? Well, it's the same thing. The design of that type, and some of the hooks we build are a modified version of that, because we've learned some things through the last 35 years about how a fish hook needs to be built, to be able to hold fish. And so that design will hold fish better. Everybody likes to fish a football jig, 3/4 ounce football jig at the end of a 50-yard cast, right? And that fish comes up top of the water. If it's a round bend, a lot of times those fish will throw that because they can get the leverage, and there's nothing really to pin them to that. But with that O'Shaughnessy style or Spro style bend, it holds them better. And so that's why we've done it. We can use whatever we want to. One of the reasons we've stayed in business as long as we have is because we really want to build tools that are better. As an angler right now and through all, forever, I guess, fishing is can be very inexpensive, but we choose to make it very expensive by the way we do things, right? So,
Yeah.
you know, you can walk down the bank and catch fish, and that's wonderful, and that's a great way to get started. But if you want to bump that up, you can spend as much money as you want to on stuff, right? But ultimately, what we need to have is the very best fishing experience that we can have as an angler, right? That's the reason we go. We want to have a good experience while we're on the water. So it's my belief that if you're going to do that, as a manufacturer, I feel like we owe it to the consumer to build them the very best product we can so that their experience is the best that they can have, right? And that's why we do it. I mean, none of us get to fish as much as we want to. Some of us have to work on washers and dryers and stuff like that, right? We don't get to fish as much, right? And so when we do get to go, we want to have a good experience. And so that's why we do what we do. We have a very high level of accuracy. All of our jigs weigh the same. We use a lead that we mix ourselves, and we formulate ourselves so that they all weigh the same, and we have the right hardness of lead that we want to have to do what we're trying to do. Lead in and of itself, and I'm getting off the topic of a Spro bend hook, but
No,
lead
go on, man. Go on.
You know, lead can vary by weight by 40%. And a lot of fishing tackle companies use scrap lead. So you think about this. If it has a heavy, linotype or tin type, or it's more of a plumber's type, which would be the soft pure lead, those two things can vary by 40%. So if you have a 3/4 ounce football jig, it might weigh 3/4 or it might weigh 5/8. There's a big difference between those two. So we use the good stuff. It's more expensive, but we have tighter control over it. And when you buy a jewel jig or any of the stuff that we manufacture for a myriad of companies, it's going to be accurate every time. The reason War Eagle spinnerbaits run the way they do is because they're engineered correctly, they're balanced correctly, and they are symmetrical. They're always the same every single time. There's no variations there, and that makes a difference. It's a better experience, right? The same way with what we do and why we have custom hooks, because we feel like we owe it to the consumer to give them the very best value possible. Nothing is cheap these days. And I have a saying that is, you can build cheap, right? People build cheap all the time, but you can't build it inexpensively these days in America. And so you build the best you can build. It's going to cost what it costs, but at the end, you're going to give the consumer the best product possible. And we owe it to the consumer to do that.
Yeah, that War Eagle has kind of that O'Shaughnessy or that Spro type hook, somewhat. It's
some of them they do, yes. Some of them have a round bend, but a lot of them have that style.
Yeah, I like that hook.
Have a purpose.
Yeah, I know everybody wants a really big hook in their jig, and me personally, I know you're a big hook.
I'm a big hook guy.
I'm a little bit smaller hook guy. Yeah, and I like that. I like that kind of bend, that more of a custom type bend. I'm a believer in that. So everybody's got their own, opinion.
Well, you've turned me on that with the couple swim jigs that I've got from you that are just like a little bit small, like a trout hook compared to some of the stuff that I throw, and it's like, I don't know if this is going to catch fish, bud. Like, I don't think I can stick them with it.
So here's one thing since we're talking about hook size and stuff. When that hook penetrates and comes out the other side of the mouth, especially if you're flipping like in laydowns or if you're skipping a swim jig up into that heavy cover, the bigger that gap is, the bigger that hook, the more it's going to come out on the other side of that fish, and the more likely it is to grab something on the way out, whether it be a laydown, a stump, or whatever, and then that fish is going to get pinned. So you want, I think you certainly don't want like a 2-aught hook or something, but I think like a 3 to 4 is a really good size hook for just about anything. That's just my opinion. I mean, if you're just in grass, probably you can go with almost as big a hook as you want. And then there's the diameter of the hook too. It's going to be putting a bigger hole in the fish's mouth, and it's going to tear more. And if that fish jumps, it's going to come out. So that's just kind of why I like a 3 or 4-aught hook on most of my jigs personally.
Well, I don't know why we got to that anyway, or me personally, I don't know why I got to a big hook, because I look back in the day when I
used to fish that little bitsy.
I fished
striking bitsy bug,
a striking bitsy jig, and then they came out with the bitsy flip, and that was like the best thing ever.
That was like a 2-aught, maybe 3-aught.
It was like a 3-aught
Okay.
hook, small hook, went all the way down the shaft. It was super small.
You caught plenty of fish on that.
But you know what I flipped it with? 12-pound mono.
Sure.
Every day, all day long. I buy a 1,000-yard spool at the beginning of the year, and it lasts me all year long.
Yep.
And now we flip with 65-pound braid, and we're looking for an edge, right?
Right.
So we can get bigger, badder, and better. But I don't know why we've got away from it. I bought a couple of those Bitsy jigs. I guess it was last year or 2 years ago. I went back to fishing them again, and they still catch fish just like they did.
And you don't even have to put a trailer on a jig either. You know, we always want to put a trailer on it, but you talk about the ultimate like finesse jig would be a jig without a trailer.
Yeah,
they'll still bite it. We're just getting these habits.
It's fishermen. Like what did you say a while ago? I mean, about us spending more money. We got to put 3 things together to go catch a little green fish that's got a brain that's this big. I mean, we're outsmarting ourselves is what we're doing. We're not outsmarting them.
Right.
So
yeah, we can make it as complicated as we want to, for sure. And we can
look
make
at
it
some of the
simple
old
too.
Look at some of the old plugs. It was red and white.
Yeah, I know.
Black jitterbug.
I don't think some of the old plugs would work anymore, though. Maybe they would. Some of them are pretty gaudy, though. Some of those old, just the
wood choppers,
big old
things like that.
Paint on them. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure they'd work if you threw them enough. But I tell you what, when I fished that BFL 2 weeks ago at Table Rock, my boater was throwing a Carolina rig with a lizard, and I was like,
"When's the last time you saw that?"
Well, I keep pulling them out of storage, and they just sit. You know, I always grab a brush hog, or I always grab, whatever else. But that old lizard, man, it sucker still works. I just need to throw it.
Yep. Yeah, it's trends, right? I mean, everybody goes through trends, and there's something new comes along, and we get excited about it. We can catch fish on it, and it's the challenge of that. So there's something new. There's a challenge to it. You kind of want to learn the nuances of it, and you want to get good at it. And that's just the way it is. So, but that leads to innovation. It leads to change, and somebody's got something now that they didn't have before, and they think they've got an edge. Whether they do or they don't, sometimes they do. It's all part of the game, and it's interesting. It's what makes it fun. If we just had one thing to fish with, it'd get boring after a while. So there's a lot of validity in all the new stuff that you see, and some of it has staying power, and some of it, it kind of goes by the wayside. But ultimately for us, we just want to build the best tools possible. You build a set of cabinets with a chainsaw and a post maul, right? But if you really want to build a nice set of cabinets, you probably need to have a little more sophisticated equipment to do it with. And so it's just the tools. We just try to build the very best tools, do what you want to do. If you want to flip a jig, we take into consideration the angle of the line to the water, because you're not flipping it at, 100 yards or 50 yards, you're flipping it at 20 feet, right? And so the angles of that is much different than it would be a football jig fishing on a point 30 feet deep where you got 100 feet of line out or 150 feet of line out. Angles are important. So how we build the head, how we balance it, the hook we use, the style we use, the fulcrum point where you tie the line onto, all those things are extremely important based on what you're going to do with the jig. And so that's how we look at everything. It's for us, it's always function over form, right? It has to function correctly. You can make it pretty any way you want to, but it needs to function first.
I like that saying. I'm writing that one down. Function over form. I like that.
Yeah. Tom wants to know, do you have any new baits coming out?
We do have a couple that we're working on now. I'm not ready to really talk about them, but one of them is going to be a jig that is going to serve a purpose, kind of what we've already talked about. Heavier line, not a big jig, but a heavier line type thing. And then the other one is going to be more for open water fishing that has nothing to do with the jig, and that has more to do with live scope and things like that these days. So we've been prototyping those things. We've got them we've got them dialed in. And so now it's just a matter of when we want to introduce them, and we'll probably do some of that this fall, or at least by the Classic for next year.
I was just gonna ask you that. When do you find is the best time to release either new products or new baits?
We tried, of course, with COVID, it's kind of got things screwed up a little bit, but generally around the Classic. That's probably the best venue to introduce something new because you have the eyes of a lot more anglers, and it's the time of year when people are excited about it. It's usually in March, and everybody's got cabin fever and they want to get out and see what the latest and the greatest is and that. So it's usually that time of year.
Yeah, we're just starting to get used to this. The COVID's kind of started to die down a little bit, and now we got this monkeypox thing that's coming around. It's like, you get rid of one thing and here comes something else. It's crazy world.
Yeah, for sure. It makes you want to go fishing more, doesn't it?
It does, man. Get away from the crowd. Get out there where it's out in nature, away from all this stuff.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you if you had to pick up. I don't know if you can even answer this. It's kind of
loaded.
It's sort of, but if you were to pick up one jig, you could just choose one of the jigs out of your lineup. What would be your go-to?
Well, because of high water, that kind of changes things a little bit. Generally speaking, our 7/16 Pro Spider jig is my jig of choice for fishing just about anywhere that I want to fish. And the reason is because it has a head design that will come through rocks, which, in the Ozarks, we have our fair share of those. And then it also has a design, though, that will let it come through cover. And so it has our custom hook in it. It's not a big jig. It's a finesse jig. I can use up to 15-pound line real easy with it. Just, don't tighten your drag completely up, but I can fish it down, I can go to 10-pound line. And if I have to fish it 40 feet deep, I can. Or I can use, 12, 15-pound line, and I can pitch it around heavy cover, and I can haul fish out with it. So it's kind of my favorite. It's 7/16. The important thing about fishing a jig is you need to develop a feel for what that jig is doing at all times. And so for me, a 7/16 really, fits the bill for me. So if I had just had one, that would be it. I have 2 or 3 favorites that I use consistently, because now we have high water and I have to, generally fishing a lot of cover. And so sometimes I want to use big flipping stick and big line and go do that. And then I'll go to something else. But if I just had one, it would be that one.
So top 3 colors.
For me, I keep things very simple. I like the Okeechobee blue because that's a gourd green or green pumpkin with blue flash. That one right there. That other one you showed with the orange in it is also very good, our gourd green orange. And then I'll go with something that brown, like Missouri Craw is really good. It's got brown, black, and chartreuse. And so you have a lot of options there. And then probably third would be Basswhacker. That's a relatively new color in our lineup, but it was a color that I had for 3 years that I use only for me. And then finally I introduced it. And, peanut butter and jelly, you guys may or may not know this, but peanut butter and jelly is a color that we both innovated the color and the name.
Really?
Yes.
Cool.
So back in the day, Mark Fisher, who I think he just retired from Rapala not too long ago, he was my skirt guy. And so we were working together on this, and I told him what colors I wanted to do. And so he sent me some samples, and I said, what are we going to call this? He said, I don't know, man. I said, I think what you got looks like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I said, well, I think we'll just call it peanut butter and jelly then. He said, all right, sounds good. Well, that's what I'll write down in the sample book. So that's what we did. So peanut butter and jelly is it's a staple now. I don't think that there's any jig company around that doesn't have peanut butter and jelly. Most crankbait companies have peanut butter and jelly, and almost every plastic company has peanut butter and jelly. But we started that. We innovated the color and the name, and that's where it started. And so that would be another one. But I keep things very simple. I want something. Basswhacker is something that's going to imitate crawfish when they've got that orange in them, but also sunfish. So bluegill. Right now, around the spawn, Bass Whacker. Yeah, that's a good one. And then the other one, the gourd green and blue, that works even in pretty stained water because you've got the blue flash and the gourd green. So I call it gourd green, but it's Okeechobee blue is what it is. But it's a green pumpkin with blue flash. So if I had 3, that would be it. If I had to add 4, the other would be peanut butter and jelly, of course.
My favorite color, you can look this up while we're on here, is this brown purple flash.
Right.
I
Yeah.
absolutely love that color, especially on Table Rock. That's been it's been a really good color.
That's an old color. That's one of the originals. So when we came out with a football jig, oh gosh, I don't know, back in the 90s, I guess. Brown and purple flash is one of those colors that you just had to have. There was a guy, Jordan Cecil works for me, and he'll get a kick out of this. His grandfather was Chicken Hodge, and he's the one that tied up the brown and purple way back in the day, and he showed a lot of these guys this. So I didn't come up with that. I stole that from him. And but it's a really good color, deep water color or shallow color, shallow water color. So you had to have purple if you're going to fish Bull Shoals or Table Rock. It's just, that was a law, it's unwritten rule somewhere.
That's one of my favorite, like, if you go into my jig box, and so I those are pretty jigs, but I'm really simple when it comes to jigs. I throw a brown jig, I throw a black and blue jig, and that's pretty much it. And when I get crazy, it's a brown and purple, and that's about as crazy as I get. I literally have 3 colors in my football jig and my flipping jig box. I don't get too crazy with it.
Yeah.
I tried. That was a couple years ago. I stopped buying all the crazy colors. I stopped doing the fisherman thing, and I limited myself to like 5 soft plastic colors and 3 or 4 jig colors, because it gets ridiculous, right? I mean, you can go out there and you can have a Bass Pro Shops or a tackle store in your boat with colors and never have anything that you need because you keep throwing the same green pumpkin.
Right. Well, the deal is with jig fishing, there really is a system to that. And I think one of the things that's really important with that is that pick out those colors that you have confidence in based on the water clarity, right? Or maybe, what they're eating. They're eating crawfish, they're eating shad, are they eating, bluegill? But keep it really simple, and then just concentrate on the bite. So one of the things that, I've learned through the years and from some very good jig fishermen, and that is that being able to detect the bite is really the key, right? That sounds really simple, but that is the key. A really good jig fisherman, I mean a really exceptional jig fisherman, probably is still only going to detect probably 70-75% of the bites. I mean, a really good one.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And so if you start changing colors and jigs and sizes and line and rods and all these things, every time you make a change, you lose the feel that you're trying to develop in being able to fish that jig. So keep it simple, develop the feel based on, depth and what you're fishing, and choose the right rod, the right line, and do that. Rod choice is extremely important in jig fishing, more so than it is probably in a lot of other things. You can get by with several different rods, throwing spinnerbait probably, but throwing a jig, you really need to have the right setup for that. And so keep it simple, and then concentrate and put all the changing things out of your mind when you're jig fishing, and just concentrate on the bite, making the best pitch or flip or cast possible to the cover you want to fish, and then pay attention to what's going on with it. Tune out everything else. I fished Central Pro-Ams, Heartland Pro-Ams back in the day, and I'd always ask, tell my partners when we took off, I said, look, when we're fixing to take off, or we're going to eat a bite, or whatever, those rare occasions where we stop to eat, we'll talk. But when I'm fishing a jig, I don't want you talking to me. Like, if you need the net, holler net. Otherwise, I said, it's going to be a very quiet day. Now, I said, you're welcome to anything I've got in my boat. You can get in any of my tackle boxes and get whatever you need. It's whatever. All the snacks, the water, the drinks, it's all available to you. Whatever you need down my tackle, you can have. I don't care. But we're going to be quiet. because I have to concentrate on that bite, right?
Yeah.
And so that's just the way it is. It's a very quiet day in my boat because of that. I have to concentrate on that so that I know, is my jig lighter than it was before? Is it heavier? Does it feel mushy? Did it move to the left or the right 3 or 4 inches? Did it move toward me? Did it move back? All those things you have to pay attention. And so if you can clear your mind of all the clutter and just pay attention to what you're doing, you're going to get way more bites. You're going to detect way more bites, and you're going to get more bites because you're going to put it where it needs to be. And all those things are very, very important in jig fishing. You can do other things with a crankbait or spinner, but anything moving, you can laugh and cut up and have a good time. And, you're probably still going to have fair success catching, but you can't do that jig fishing.
Yeah. I would second that with shaky head fishing too, because real similar. Anything that's moving real slow on the bottom. Yeah. That Table Rock video, the BFL video that I dropped, there's several times where I was watching it back, and I'm like, I keep talking about the bait just kind of going away or getting just light, and there's a reason why I put that extra commentary in there. I was just trying to reiterate how difficult it is to detect a bite sometimes, and you have when you're throwing a 3/16 ounce shaky head on 12-pound test and 20 foot of water, you got to really, really focus on that because a lot of times you don't get a thump. Very rarely do you get a thump.
Oh, no. It's a drum.
It gets light. Yeah, exactly. It's the wrong species when that happens. It just gets light. It just kind of go away for a little bit. And that goes back to what you just said. If you're not focusing and you're not totally in tune with that bait, you're going to miss that bite. And I think even then you are missing some bites because there's a couple times where you're like, I think that was a bite. It's over with. I didn't say I missed it, but my mind's going, I think that was a bite. And then once that happens once or twice, the next time you feel that same thing, you set, and sure enough, there's a fish there. So they bite different every day, and most of the time it's not a thump. It's not that that dream jig bite where they just crack it. It's usually just a slight little tick or just something different, and that's why it's real important to have a real sensitive rod.
It is, and I have a saying that is jerks are free, right? So if you think that there's something going on, just set the hook, and you'd be surprised how many times you'll connect with a fish and you go, wow, I never would have caught that fish any other way, but I just had a feeling something was different. Mm-hmm. And so you're right, rod choice, line choice, and then pick out a jig you like based on the cover you're going to fish in a color that you like, you have confidence in. Pick a trailer that is going to give you the action you need, because trailer choice is more important than jig color choice. And so that's, very important. And then the rest of the time, just concentrate and bear down and put your cast in the right place and, pay attention.
Well, talking about the right tool to fill the jig on the bottom, Rob has a question. He says he wants to hear more about the Virtus rods and the story behind them.
Okay. Well, Virtus is produced by a rod factory in Harrison, at Mid-America Rods. They were founded originally, I think, in 1976. So it's an American rod company that's been around for a very long time. The guys who own it now, Russell and Greg, are tremendous people and have a real attention, to detail. The people they've got working at the factory, a lot of those people have been there, for over a decade. Some of them have been there for 16, 17 years, so they've got experienced rod builders. I got involved. They approached me wanting us to, see what we could do together. So our role in that is sales and marketing, because we've been in the business 35 years. We have we've been very fortunate, and we have the ear of people that can make decisions, at the retail level. So while they were very experienced in building rods and been around a long time, not so much in building their own rod. And so had a hand in it in the beginning with building rods that for jig fishing. My only requirements were, look, there's a couple things that you really need to know, and a couple things I'd really like to see in a rod if you're going to do this. Because I think that for jig fishing, I think that it needs to be right. I think they had a lot of experience with a lot of other type of rods for fishing crankbaits and stick baits and all those, and so they're a lot like us. So KG is a manufacturer. We build things for a lot of other people, right? Well, so do they at the rod factory. They build rods for a lot of other people. But there's something about when you own a factory and you have all the resources available to you to do things like you would like to do them because it's yours, then you're the one making all the decisions about that, right? And so you have, years of experience, and you put all those things together to make the very best of whatever it is you're trying to do. They have the same level of dedication building rods for their customers as we have building jigs, spinner baits, spoons, buzz baits for our customers. But many times the customer has certain criteria they want to meet, right? There's certain things they want to do and how they want to do them. And that's all great, right? There's nothing wrong with that. But I think there's something about having a factory that you can do what you want to do and how you want to do it, and use the products that all these years of experience have taught you to do. And then you make all the decisions on it. The other thing is that if you're working with customers to build things, there's several iterations of things that have to take place. And those, each time you make a change, then you have to email those changes, or you have to send samples, whatever. Well, all that takes time, right? And so the length of time to do a project, for somebody else takes a lot more time than it does if you're just going to do it for yourself. There's a lot of projects that take nearly a year for us to complete at KG for a customer, just because of all the changes that need to be made to meet all the criteria. The same thing I can do in a week because I have all the resources available to me. And so the rod factory, I think, in that respect, is very similar. We don't have to ship rods around the country or jigs around the country because it's all in our facility, right? It's like, so, and we're only an hour from the rod factory, so it makes it really, really convenient for us and that. So, the rods really are exceptional. I've had brands through the years that I've been very dedicated to because I felt like they had the best at what I wanted to do, for me. And I think we've exceeded that. And I spoke, I don't think they would mind me mentioning this. I spoke with, Sutton and Scott Berry at the OMTT, and they told me that they've not had anything like these ever in their hand. They think this is the best they have ever used by far. Wow. And that really goes, that's a good endorsement, because these guys have been around a long time and have had a lot of experience. So I think we've really landed on something that is exceptional. And we're very proud and very happy about that.
Pull these up while we're talking about them. I know we've already been talking about them a little bit, but one of the questions I had about them, so you have two different series. You have the blue diamond, and then you have the red diamond, and you've got wind grip and cork. So what are some of the differences in, say, the blue diamond versus the red diamond?
The blue diamond has really good quality components and good quality materials, good quality composites and fabric to design those. And they're really a better rod than they're priced at. And then the red diamond just uses higher quality of all those things. So the difference is, I liken it back to whenever Lynn Reeves started Lew's Reels. We were one of Lynn's very first distributors when Lew's made a reintroduction. And the difference between Lew's Reels was the more you paid, the lighter they got. The quality was good throughout the whole lineup. It's just if you want the lightest and the smoothest, it costs more. Well, it's the same way in the rods. If you want the lightest, best balanced, then that requires more technology, better fabrics, better composites, and better, guides and things like that. So that's it. They're both very good quality. It's just how light and how sensitive would you like to have a rod be?
Yeah, I have I've got the 7'2" medium heavy swim jig rod, and it's the Red Diamond series. It's got the wind grip, and it's ridiculously light, very well balanced, super sensitive. All the things that you'd want, really. I mean, I've got a lot of nice rods, but it's one of the nicer rods that I have. And like I was telling you earlier when we were talking, it's so sensitive that you have to kind of learn how to fish it, because you feel everything is really amplified.
You
so
almost feel too much.
It takes a little bit of an adjustment.
Yeah.
So it's definitely ideal for anything you're dragging on the bottom. If you really want to feel every little nuance on the bottom, that's it. I don't know. I mean, I think it's as good as any rod that I've had, and I've had it for probably a couple months, and I keep picking it up and keeping it in my hand. So yeah, man, they're good rods. You guys did really good on that.
Well, thank you. Well, and then the actions are really important for other things. So to have a really good bladed jig rod, you need to have the right action so you don't lose the fish, right? I mean, if it's too stiff, they'll throw it. The football jig rod needs to be able to hook a fish at the end of a long cast and be able to get him in, right? So you have to have the right parabolic action for that. The spinnerbait rod needs to be able to have the right tip so that you can do a good roll cast or whatever you need to do to put that spinnerbait where it needs to be. The accuracy is very important in how a rod is built based on the product you're going to throw. So things that where you're going to be throwing it in targets and making long casts, all those things go into that. The wart crawler rod, I mean, I've had guys, experienced wiggle wart fishermen say, man, I can throw nearly all the line off my reel with this thing. Well, in the Ozarks, that's an important thing because, we want to be able to make those long casts and get that extra, foot and a half out of a cast because of the length that you make, or depth because of the length that you make of a cast. And so, that's important. And then whenever you do hook a fish, and like I told you earlier, I use 8-pound mono on a wiggle wart. And so when you hook a fish and he runs under the boat, you've got to have the right action so he doesn't, bust you off. Or when he comes up and jumps, like they're going to do, they stay stuck. That's really important. That action is extremely important. The stick bait rod, I'm not a stick bait professional by any means, but the guys who are say that the stick bait rod is the absolute deal. They've never had one better than this. It's and swim jig rod. And then we've got several rods that fit. There's several things you can do with those, right? It's again building the right tool for doing what you want to do. You can do several things with any rod, but if you really want to be dialed in and get it, just be specific with what you're doing, we offer a rod for that, and we feel like that because of how they're designed and built, it's just a better tool.
Yeah, I got to throw the jerkbait rod. And I throw a Hawgz Custom Light. It's like a 6'8" jerkbait rod, which I really, really like. And I was throwing that, and I picked up when I was fishing with Dell that day. He had the Virtus Red Diamond, jerkbait rod there on the front deck, and I picked it up, and it was really, really similar to my favorite jerkbait rod. So it wasn't like it was super, super light. And that's the whole thing. There's a lot of sensitive rods out there, but having one that's light in your hand and not tip heavy. Tip heavy is to me, tip heavy is the biggest deterrent. I've had some pretty sensitive rods, but you're fighting them all day, and after a couple hours, they definitely wear you out. So
wear you out.
Yeah. It's the whole package is what you're looking for.
You can have a heavy rod, but if it's balanced right, like heavy.
doesn't-
When I say heavy weight,
heavy
rod,
action,
heavy action, heavy weight rod that weighs a lot, that won't wear you out if it's balanced right.
That's correct.
But if you have a light action rod or a lighter rod that's built poorly or balanced poorly.
Well, take a spinning rod. Take a spin, just a 7-foot medium spinning rod.
Right.
Just holding. So here's your reel, where your reel attaches to the rod right here, like this. Okay. So holding it like this versus holding it like this, versus holding it like this, your wrist is supporting different amounts of weight. And that's kind of how a tip can be. If a rod's tip heavy, it's almost the same process. There's going to be a comfortable spot.
You got to find the balance.
You got to find that balance on the spin cast, and it's the same thing with a rod. There's a sweet spot to put that reel. You don't want too much handle, and it's got to be weighted in the bud. And I don't know how they build rods, but I know that's part of it.
It is.
You got your reel needs to be in a certain spot. How you going to make it sit right on the rod?
Well, and you can't satisfy everybody as a rod manufacturer. I mean, there's guys out there that are like me, that like a little shorter handle. And then there's guys out there that want something that's going to stab them in the ribs every time they make a cast. There's a balance between there somewhere that you got to satisfy for the majority, not the minority.
And it depends on the technique.
Yeah,
a jerkbait rod, you don't want a real long handle because
you don't want it catching in your
right
hooded sweatshirt.
But if you're throwing like a big swim bait, then or a big crankbait, you can have a little bit longer.
Tuck
handle
it underneath your arm. And...
So a lot of variables.
Yep. It's just how you build the tool, and it needs to be comfortable, and balance, like you guys said, is really, really important.
For sure.
Crawford wants to know, he says, Jules special ops jigs are awesome. It's also a great thing that Gayle and Jewel has done for our military. So that's a really, I know the military is important to you. So how did the special ops jigs come about?
We the line itself was something that I was already building. I had a custom hook built that I wanted, that was going to be a short hook, kind of a modified O'Shaughnessy style bend, heavier wire, but something that would not be a big, long jig, be very compact, and something that you could do a wide range of things with. And so and I'll talk about the jig a little bit, then I'll tell you about how it came about. So it's almost impossible to put a heavy hook into a finesse jig, because there's not enough room, the way that stock hooks are built, for you to get a weed guard in there. And so we built a hook so we could build the jigs we wanted to build with it. And so we designed it special for that. And then we had some friends that we had come to know at working some Bassmaster Classics and some trade shows and things that were part of special ops military. And so we got to know those guys, and was just really impressed with them as individuals, and obviously grateful for their service and what they've sacrificed for us on a daily basis. And so as we got to know these special ops guys, they were from different branches of the military. Some of them Marines, some of them Army, some of them were Navy SEALs. And we just got to talking to them one day, just over dinner, and just said, they had special ops survivors they had team special ops survivors. And what that was special ops survivors was a group that would give back money to widows, or the ones left behind, to help them with everyday expenses, maybe that the military didn't cover. So if they needed something above what the government could take care of, they would step in and help them to make the transition whenever they lost their loved one, right? And so I asked them, I said, well, what I'm really interested in, what can we do to help that? And so we got talking about it. I said, well, it looks like the biggest thing we can do is bring attention to what you guys are trying to do. They said, yeah, really, that's it. We just like to spread the word. I said, well, I wonder how we can do that together. And so we already had the product. And so I said, well, why don't, we had the hooks. I hadn't really built the product yet, but I had the hooks available. I said, let's build a line of product then that will take the best of all of our products, and we'll build one with a special hook that is a heavier hook, because we always have the request for a finesse jig with a heavy hook in it. The problem is that there wasn't one that existed that would work correctly. If you had a regular heavy hook, then the line or the bend down was too long, and so it stuck out too far out of the head, and so it just didn't work. So we had to build a hook so we could build the jigs we wanted. But what we did then, I said, well, what if we honored some of these fallen heroes? And I said, I just have a desire, but I have no intimate knowledge of how we do that. And I'm not going to be the one to assume that I know anything about what you guys have gone through. And I certainly don't know anything about what it's like to serve and then lose a member of your team. I don't know what that's like. I have no idea. I can just imagine the pain and anguish that would be part of that. So I said, well, what if we honored these heroes on our packaging? And I said, we'll build a card, and we'll build it like a book. And so you actually open it up. And on the back of it will be the story, part of the story of the fallen hero. And we'll have the spouses write the story of how they would like to have their hero remembered. And so we put that on the back of the package. And then when you open it up, it tells the rest of the story. And then it tells about, Team Special Ops survivors and what their mission is. And so that's how that all came about. And so we give 10% of the proceeds from the sales of the Special Ops goes back to, to the fallen, to these organizations, to the families and the charities that support the families of these fallen soldiers. So that's how that all came about. We did the head color in a camo. We did the wig guard in a camo. We did designed the packaging around, the Special Ops themes and things like that. But mainly for us, it's not a real profitable item for us, but it is a way that we can give back to that and not forget about those fallen heroes. And so just let them be remembered and then bring attention to the whole situation. That was our motive behind it all.
That's great.
It's a great story.
That's a great story, man. Really good stuff.
It's a humbling thing. They're so appreciative, and I'm like, man, you don't need to be appreciative toward what we're doing. I mean, compared to what you guys have done, we're not doing anything, right? But it means a lot to them that attention would be brought to it. And it means a lot to us that we have that platform and that opportunity to do it. And so it's an awesome responsibility, and it's an awesome opportunity for us.
Well, hats off to you guys for stepping up and making that happen. I mean, that's awesome. I mean,
well, it's one thing to talk about it. It's another thing to actually do
exactly
about it,
exactly.
So,
well, thank you. We're humbled and honored by the opportunity for sure. For sure. And who wouldn't be, right? I mean,
I've listened to several podcasts. Jocko, he's Jocko Wilkin. I think he's an ex-Marine. Well, you're never an ex, but he's a Marine Navy SEAL. Not a Marine Navy. He's a SEAL. He's on the SEAL team. But anyway, he has a lot of his guests are former military guys that have been through just crazy stuff overseas, and the stories they tell, and just to be in that situation and survive, it's amazing. So
yeah,
it's good. It's good that people are out there supporting that stuff, because like you said, you don't really know what that's like if you haven't been in the middle of all that stuff.
No, you hear these stories and you're just blown away by them, and the amount of bravery and sacrifice and commitment that it takes to do these things it's unbelievable. I can't even comprehend it.
Yeah. Yes. Shimano Shane wants to know, will we ever see a round rubber jig again?
Well, we would like to. The problem is that it getting anything tied is extremely difficult to do, and a round rubber jig pretty much has to be hand tied, either with thread or back in the day we used copper wire. Copper wire today probably would not be an alternative. Gold wire would probably be cheaper. So that's the problem, is that to get labor to hand tie, live rubber, round rubber is nearly impossible to do. You would have to have somebody like in China do it. And so, you have to ask yourself, is that really an option that you want to try to pursue these days? So, I would really like to, and I've been toying with how we would do it. We have a lot of sophisticated things that we do on a daily basis. We're doing robots, and we have automation, and we have some really cool stuff. So I'm trying to figure out how I would do it, and I've not give up on it yet. But because I would really like to, because I really think there's something to that. I know the demand is there, but man, the way to do it, like most people that have tried it, they make a big, it comes out of the gate, like a big thing, and then about 2 months in, they're like, we can't get anybody to tie these things. It's like, yeah, I know. That's why we don't do it.
and that time
you start it and then you're done.
Yeah.
Because nobody's going to sit at home and tie these things, to 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning so they can make $50, and then you'd have to charge so much for them. Is the angler going to give that much for one of them? And so there has to be a way, but I've got some ideas. I just haven't had time to fully develop them because I've got other things going on that are more pressing, but someday.
So speaking about expensive jig, Tom says, is the $10 blockage jig overpriced?
I don't know.
I don't know.
If I'll put it this way. If you guys want to tie some jigs, I'll send you some, and send you the rubber and the material. And if you'll tie me, I probably will need about 5,000 to begin with.
Yeah.
When you get those tied
this week, right? This week.
Well, this week, and then let me know what they would cost me to do it. I'm not even going to tell you what I'd pay you. You just tell me after you tie 5,000 how much you charge to do it, and then we'll ask you if $10 is too much.
Yeah,
because I'm going to say you're going to go, no, $10 is not near enough for that jig.
Well, I'd have to send you a bill for carpal tunnel, surgery or something.
I know.
Yeah,
it's all that. And so
are your jigs skirts? Is that automated? Putting skirts on the jigs?
Not yet. We still do that manually.
Okay. Just a lot faster than hand tying, obviously.
Yes, absolutely. Now the skirts that we use they have a double band. They have an inside core, and then they have an outside band, and so the strands are glued to the inside core and then banded on top. And so you get the effect. You had our webpage pulled up a minute ago. If you look at our skirts, they look like they're hand tied. They have that pillowing effect. And that's what you'll get with a hand tied jig. So if you look at just the skirt itself, you had those up a minute ago. You'll see, they look hand tied, especially the finesse ones. They really pillow out. But you can see how tight it is in the middle. And that's what you're accomplishing by hand tying it, is getting that tight fit so that it flares out.
And that's the whole key with we're talking about hand tying the round rubber. You've got to tie that, you got to cinch that down to get that flare. That's the whole, that's the secret right there.
It is. And we've been able to accomplish it by doing what we've done with this type of skirt. It flares really nice. So that's the reason we went that direction. They were a lot more expensive than just the regular slip-on skirts, but The other thing is it keeps the strands all where you want them to be.
Yeah, that's true.
That's another problem. If you have just a banded skirt and you want to, black, blue, and purple, let's say, you're not going to have black on top, blue on the sides, and purple on the bottom. When you put it on there, it's going to be everywhere.
Right.
But with the way we do it, it is all where we want it to be every time.
SF Outdoors says, do you have a factory store?
We don't, just online.
Okay.
We want to take care of our retailers and, our dealers and things. So we try not to compete against them. But there's areas where we may not have a dealer, or the dealer may not carry product that somebody's looking for or whatever. And so they can go online and order them.
I mean, you guys are a one-stop shop, American made, blue collar, by the grace of God. I mean, you guys got it all. I mean, and American made. I wrote down, do you know how many American made rod companies there are left out there?
Not very many.
I was going to say there can't be a ton.
And see, here's the other misconception. So a lot of your American rod companies are getting imported blanks from China, Korea, Taiwan, and they're wrapping them with guides and putting handles on them, and they call them American made, but that doesn't make them American made. The rods that are built here, they cut the fabric by hand, and they're building the blank in-house. It's not an imported blank.
Right. Start to finish, this is American made by our own hands.
Yeah. And there's a big difference. I mean, there's some very expensive rods that are made in China and other places, and they don't cost much to have built. So the thing with American made rod is just like American made jigs. It's going to cost what it costs. We have American labor. We have American taxes. We have American federal excise tax, all the things that go into that, so you can't build things inexpensively. So let's build them the best we can build them, and let's be as efficient at that as we can. And then let's give the best value we can. But at the end of the day, it's going to cost what it costs. Right. So again, it goes back to offering the consumer the best product and the best experience. Let's build the best we can. And quality is going to cost you maybe a little bit more, but you get what you pay for.
Well, cheap only benefits one party, right? And that's the one that sold it.
Yes.
Not the one that bought it, not anybody else. The one that sold it cheap is the only one that benefits.
It. Yeah.
So,
and there's plenty of cheap stuff.
Oh, 100%.
Sure. And some of that cheap stuff is expensive.
You're exactly right.
So, it's served us well for 35 years almost to do what we do the way we do it, and try to build the best tools and just build the best quality, most consistent products on the market. And that's what we do.
For sure.
And we're proud of that. We don't back up from that.
Well, Doug's probably sleeping by now, but he says, Gayle, are you having any supply issues? He's getting ready to order some hound dogs and was wondering if they're available. Doug makes the auto Trieve. It's a lure retrieve system, and he uses the hound dog.
Yeah, I'm very, very familiar with his system. It's a really good one. We do have hound dogs available. Yes.
Okay.
Everybody doing whatever you do these days has supply issues. We've been really fortunate because of most of what we do is custom. We were forced to order a year in advance before COVID. Right. So now everybody has to order a year in advance. We kind of started that 20 years ago when we started building custom hooks. We had to order that much in advance anyway. So we're already kind of in that mode. But still, things catch you off guard at times. And every factory is struggling to get things out in a timely manner. And so sometimes you run out of things but we've got a good supply of hound dogs.
Good deal. How's labor right now?
It's still tough. And we've had to do some other things, to automation is one of the things we've been doing. I have a background in automation. Before I did what I'm doing now, I worked at a medical device manufacturing company, and I got to be there firsthand to see automation start at one of the largest medical manufacturers in the world. And it was my department that did it, and I begged and pleaded to get that job, and I got it. And so I got to see some things and do some things and be involved in some things that was really unique at the time. You look back and go, wow, how'd that even happen? And it's just by God's grace I was there when it happened and was a part of it. So we've had, we automate things as much as we can and keep good labor to do the things that we need to have done, and we keep marching forward. And every day is a new challenge. But in business, no matter what you do, it's just problem solving. And we're really good at solving problems. And that's kind of the definition of business these days is every day is a new problem. What are you going to do about it? Mm-hmm. And but in every problem, there's also an opportunity. And so we just take advantage of it and figure it out and move on, keep on.
I don't call them problems. I always call them opportunities.
Yeah.
You got there. You just took the long way around.
Yeah. Well, when you first are confronted by it, this is a problem, right? But then, you work through it and go, okay, well, we can make this better. And, a lot of times, we're not successful for the first 10 tries. And so, but I tell my guys, I said, well, we've learned a lot. We know that we don't ever want to do it like that again. So let's do it a different way and see if we have better results. But it's the failures in life and in business that propel you toward doing better. And that's where you learn everything. You don't learn everything from hitting on it right the first time. You learn because you've been in the trenches and you've had to struggle through it all. And you continue to do it and you come out the other side better, faster, stronger than you went in. And that's the important part.
You get real nervous when you hit it on the first try.
Yeah, you do.
Especially in business, you go, whoa. Yeah. We got to rethink this again.
Yeah, this is going to blow up, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. There's a fuse lit somewhere. We just hadn't seen it yet.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, Doug is still watching.
That's
surprised.
A surprise.
I'm surprised. I think he was wanting us to bring up that 30-pound sack he caught at WAP again one more time before he went to bed.
I don't blame you. I would too.
Don't blame
you. Stephanie says she has used the jewel heads, the shaky heads. They're powder coated, and I wouldn't mind talking about this head design. So this is the jewel shaky head.
Okay.
This is the one.
Pro shaky head, yeah.
Pro shaky head, and this is the one that I did really good on Kentucky Lake, and I did really good on Table Rock with this head, and it's got a unique keeper design on it. Mm-hmm. How did that happen? It's a lot different than your standard shaky head as far as that keeper design. So
right,
just curious how you came up with that design.
I've got a really good designer, young guy. His name's Josh, and it's something Josh and I've been talking about for a while. And what we wanted to do was to have, for somebody that wasn't experienced, be able to rig a shaky head every single time right. And so if you'll put it on there at the angle that is, it will put the worm or whatever plastic that you've got at the right angle for that hook to penetrate it. And then it also keeps it from turning. So the other important thing about that style versus one that maybe has a screw lock that's stuck in the top of the head or a post in the top of the head, if you had both of those rigged, what you would see very quickly is that on the one that you just showed everybody, yeah. And so when you rig that one, your worm is now higher up on the head, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Whenever you set the hook, your hook travels horizontally down that worm. It stays inside and it travels down that worm. That other one, whenever you set the hook, that hook goes through the worm sideways. It doesn't travel lengthwise. That first one, and I've done them because I've got one similar that I've built. And we build them for a lot of people. There's nothing wrong with them, but between the two, if you want to get more fish in the boat, that pro shaky head style will get you more because the angle of it, the hook goes through it, not down it.
Yep. I never thought about the angle. That's interesting.
It's more like a flipping hook.
Yeah, the thing that I've always preached about is when you have a screw lock, here's your gap, the point to the tip of that screw lock. This screw lock kind of acts like a weed guard.
Right.
Something like this is a great shaky head, and I use it a lot, but I'll actually cut down about half of that screw lock. I'll cut it down about half because you only need like, I don't know, you need like a turn and a half to hold that worm on.
Right.
But something like this, you know, it's all gap. You know, your worm is sitting right there, and you're adding probably, I would say, 1/4 of an inch at least of gap by not having that screw post on there.
Right.
So, and I really think it makes a difference. I really do.
Well, if you had those two rigged, you would also see that the pro shaky head, whenever it sits on the bottom, your worm is standing upright.
Gotcha. That's huge too. So this is a good one. This is the one.
And then the head design is our pro spider head design, which comes through Rocks better than anything I've ever tried. And we built a lot of stuff over the years. And
that's a good job.
I've made a lot of bad ones before you make good ones. And but that design for Rocks is the best that I found. It's the same one on that 7/16 Pro spider jig I was telling you about. Okay. I use it a lot. For Rocks. I have not found a better one.
And so it's got flat on both sides. It's like
it's like the bow of your boat.
Right. Yeah, it's a good one, man. It does a really good job. I like it. It's got a good.
I don't think you're condoning taking the bow of your boat through Rocks, but
right.
No, this comes through better. Rocks a lot better than the bow of my boat does. I promise you that.
I don't know. With live scope, the bow of my boat's going to see a lot more rocks, and same way with the back end of my boat. So,
yep.
Stephanie wants to know, how many employees do you have in your company?
I think right now we have 16.
Okay.
We'll average between 14 and 18, generally speaking. And we're always looking for good help. So.
Yeah, good help, man.
That's hard to find anymore, isn't it?
It is. I've got several people, that've been with me, 5 to 20 years. So we're really fortunate in that. It's different than it used to be, for sure. So you just have to be smart and treat the people you've got, treat them well, and continuously innovate and try to figure out ways to cut corners, on how you do things. Not cut corners on quality, but just make things more efficient on how you do things. There's always ways to improve, processes. So you continuously work on those.
So you have James Watson on board now. Is that correct?
Yeah.
He's a character.
James is a mess. Yeah. I'd worked with James before. I've known James for, 20 years. Fished against him in Central Pro-Ams back in the day, in the Heartlands and all that. And he approached us about, doing some rods specific to what he likes to do. And that's, spoon jacking, throwing a whopper plopper, and throwing a buzz bait. And so he worked with Russell and Greg's Rod Factory, and we've got 3 rods made for those things. And the plopper rod, you'll have to have a lot of line on your reel because you can cast it all off of it with that thing. And if you have a bite at the end of that big long cast, you can get the hook set and get him in with it. So same way with the buzz bait. I haven't used a spoon jacking rod yet, but it's post spawn's coming, and it's going to be time for that here pretty quick. So, but he's an expert at those things. That's what he likes to do. That's in his wheelhouse. And so he wanted some rods, specifically for that. We didn't have anything like that, so it worked out good.
Now, are those available to public now?
Yeah, they are.
Okay.
Yep.
He's got a little bit of a military background as well, too. So
yeah, James was
drill sergeant.
He was drill sergeant.
Yes, sir.
He seems like a drill sergeant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No nonsense when he needs to be.
Yeah. Yeah. The real James Watson, when you get him, you just talking to him and all that, he's really interesting, and he's a funny guy, and he loves military and loves his country, and he's a hoot.
Awesome.
Yeah, we stay when we go to Table Rock. We stay in Mill Creek, and it's right in the town of Lampy, and and that's
where he's from.
That's where he's from.
His house is right there on Table Rock, right there by just cross the bridge and down one of the subdivisions there. Yeah,
right. Well, we had it's been probably a month and a half ago. We had Cody Huff on here, and he was telling a story about fishing a night tournament on Bull Shoals. And he was driving back about 2 a.m. in the morning, and he said he saw this Sasquatch come across the highway right in front of him and jump over the guardrail. He swore. So I was just wondering if you had any Sasquatch stories from your neck of the woods, or if you've heard of anything running around in the hills of Bull Shoals. We found it. Me and Dale found a cave over on Bull Shoals, and we swore that it was probably a place where Sasquatch sleeps at.
Yeah, well, it probably is. There's a lot of caves on Bull Shoals and on Norfolk, so it's totally possible. I mean, it's you can't rule it out for sure. If Cody Huff's seen it, Cody would never lead you astray. So
no, we took it to heart. We've got video proof of it right here on this live stream that it happened. Well, it's certainly primitive enough out there around Bull Shoals that something could live and never be seen. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. There's no telling what you would find. There's areas of Bull Shoals on the north side of the lake, not too far from Bull Shoals Boat Dock in Marion County there that didn't have electricity even until probably 20 years ago. So, yeah, I mean, it was there's some really remote spots over there. And so it's just hard to get to.
It could actually be the people that have just been living there without electricity for all those years that are mistaken for Sasquatches.
That's possible too. That's possible. So
there's a good chance that some of the folks that come out of the Ozarks that didn't have electricity.
You never know. You just never know.
It'd look like a big old Sasquatch.
Yeah, but they did learn how to take care of themselves and survive and make a living or make a life in all these rocks. And so, man, my hat's off to those guys because it was not easy.
No, it's kind of a lost art. If something would happen where we couldn't depend on all the, commodities and the internet and grocery stores, a lot of people wouldn't make it. If we just had to go out and hunt on our own and come up with a clean water supply and build fire and, I don't know. It'd be tough. So hats off to those people that you think of like the people in the Appalachian Mountains up there. Those people are survivors. They can make it. They can get by and make do with what they have.
Yep. A lot of that, and it goes back to what we talked about to begin with. That's kind of the lifestyle here. All the way through the turn of the century, the 20s, the 30s, the 40s. After World War II, it's when all the dams were built, and that changed a lot of the landscape of the whole area. But a lot to be said for those people because they knew how to make do, and they knew how to do stuff, and there's a lot to be said for that. There's a lot of benefit in growing up hard.
Yeah, I agree. One of the first things I'm going to do, we just got 5 acres and we're starting to build here in the next couple of weeks. But once we get out on that land, we're going to have a small garden. It may just be a quarter acre or even smaller than that. But I definitely want some fresh beans, some fresh corn, just 10 crops or something, whatever we decide to pick out. Because I grew up that way. I grew up. I used to have to sit in the living room and we'd snap beans. It was the worst thing in the world to do.
Nothing worse than that.
I hated it, just snapping beans.
But we did for digging potatoes. But digging potatoes in July was worse.
I never had to do that.
You know what? You say that was so. That was one of my best memories growing up. Was digging potatoes with my grandfather in
Really?
July in the heat of, because
Yeah.
there was an
Yeah.
art to it. There was not. It wasn't just go out there and dig a hole in the ground.
No.
Because if you didn't want to stick a potato, because
No.
then you got yelled at for sticking a potato, because you stick too many of them,
Yeah.
you're gonna be in trouble.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you're right. There was an art to it, and there was.
What'd you do? Fill around or something?
Well,
or?
no, you just had to kind of know where to dig at, and you didn't just
Mhm.
like jam it into the ground. You just and the soil was always loose around the potatoes. It wasn't like it was compact, because we had rows and everything. So it was. People don't understand that are growing up today. Don't understand how to grow up.
Yeah.
We used to can too. It was a big deal.
100%.
We
100%.
canned tomatoes and green beans and okra.
Yeah.
That's the one thing now I miss is all the stuff that I did growing up as a kid. So the canning, we had blackberries and grapes, and every vegetable in the garden was in the garden, and probably had enough to feed the entire neighborhood.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, those people grew up during the Depression, and so they never wanted to be without again.
Right.
And so they kind of went overboard to make sure that they would always have plenty and enough for their neighbors if the neighbors needed it. Right.
Yep.
And so my job, I grew up the same way. My parents both, grew up during the Depression. And so you had a big garden. You did not jab the potatoes with a pitchfork. You dug them and you went down to the cellar and you cleaned out 3 bushels of old potatoes that you had to feed to the hogs, so that you could make room for the new potatoes that you just had to put in the cellar, because we had to plant more than we needed so we didn't run out.
Yeah.
And then we never ate all of them. And so we would, we'd haul 4 wheelbarrows full in, we'd haul 2 wheelbarrows full out. So
and then how did you grow potatoes? They started growing eyes, and you cut that potato in half, and then you stuck that potato in the ground, and it grew another potato.
Yeah. I remember one time we had some beans. You talk about hulling beans and snapping beans. Oh gosh. So anyway, we had a big patch of beans beside the house, and we were done. We had everything canned, and so Dad went out there and plowed them under, and it came big rain. And about 3 weeks later, we had beans again.
Yep.
So we had to do something with them. We couldn't just let them go to waste. So we snapped some more beans and hauled some more beans. Canned some more beans. So, and then 2 years later, I hauled them out of the cellar and dumped them out to the hogs, and we'd start the process again because you couldn't eat it all.
Right. Yeah.
But there's something to be learned with all that, and it's a valuable lesson. And it's a good way to grow up, and it's a shame that we don't have more of that today, for sure. But it was good times. People in this part of the country, then their livelihood depended on how well they could do those things, how well they could raise their cattle and their hogs and their chickens, and how well they could raise their garden, and how well they could can and provide. So a lot to be said for that. You learn a lot during that, because when you have to, it's different than when you just want to.
Well, you imagine what your grocery bill would be now if we did that. We all complain about our grocery bill on a weekly basis. I know my wife and I do. We'll sit there and look at the bill, and before I came over here tonight, she was getting our order together, and she's like, "Are you kidding me? That costs that much now?" I don't remember what it was, but it was like, "Oh my goodness, it's gone up that much." And I think back if we would just grow our own or take care of our own.
You definitely offset it. My grandma thinks I'm absolutely nuts for throwing fish back. She says, you go fishing, you drive an hour and 15 minutes, spend all that money on gas and fishing, lures and whatever, and then you just throw them back. What's wrong?
Yeah.
I had this conversation today with somebody, same type of conversation. And my reason is I don't want to mess with them. If I have to clean the fish, I have to budget another hour for cleaning the fish. I would rather just spend that hour actually fishing and learning. So that's my excuse. But I probably should bring back some fish every now and then, especially some crappie or something just to put in the freezer. But I don't. I keep throwing them back in. My grandma just thinks I'm crazy.
I tell you, the one thing that my grandfather would roll over in his grave for is this right here:
bottled water.
Oh yeah,
paying for a bottle of water. You can get that out of the tap.
Yeah. Whenever we first moved on the farm, had a well and a well bucket and an outhouse. So The next year we added inside plumbing, but grew up with an outhouse and a well bucket. So bottled water was not anything. We had water in bottles, but that was to put it out on the back porch so you could wash your face and hands in the basin.
Right.
Yeah.
That was, and they were in milk jugs, and the milk jugs were metal.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's amazing, like
cream cans.
Not knowing how dirt floor poor my grandparents were until I became an adult. Like looking back, I didn't know that they weren't, walking everywhere poor, but they didn't have a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But they made do with what they had. We went in the summer, we went fishing once a week, but we went fishing for a purpose, and it was to catch fish, to eat fish, and to freeze those fish. So we had fish during Lent, and it was all those things that culminated. But looking back, there was nothing that ever went to waste at my grandparents' house.
You had love. You had
100%. 100%.
They were. You guys were doing something together, and that's all you needed.
Yep. But you talk about the water. I mean, as weird as it sounds today, my grandfather took one shower a week.
Yeah.
Didn't matter if it was July or January. It was one a week.
Wow.
And it was Saturday night before you went to church on Sunday morning.
Yeah. Yep.
So, but not that he couldn't, but that's how he grew up.
Right.
Didn't know any different.
Conserved, didn't want to waste water.
That's exactly right. It's exactly right. So we do have a winner after we
got a winner.
Our rant there.
Daniel P is the winner. Congratulations,
well,
man.
Deal.
Congratulations. He's won before. And I think I got I have your shipping address. So I will forward that over your way.
That. We'll send out to him tomorrow.
Fantastic.
Excellent. Let's scroll down through here and see if we got any more questions here. If you guys got any more last minute questions, go ahead and get them out there. Sorry, we went on an old fashioned homestead rant there.
Yeah, we kind of got off on a rant.
Got on memory lane there.
Yeah, I remember my mom would walk in with a trash bag full of beans, it seemed like it was a 100-gallon trash bag. It was probably a 13-gallon trash bag, just full of beans. Dump them on the floor.
Well, see, it wasn't.
I'd have to start snapping beans.
I knew what it was because I was the one out there picking them all.
Right.
And you go in,
and it was on a Saturday. It was always on a Saturday. Your day off.
We'd go eat dinner, and then dinner was lunchtime. We'd eat dinner, and then we'd go back out after watch the news, and you went and took care of the beans all afternoon.
Yep.
So.
Yeah. Good times though.
Oh gosh, I wouldn't have traded my childhood for the world.
No. What was interesting? Whenever we did automation at Baxter, building medical devices, all of my technicians and all the supervisors end up being automation. You know what they were? They were all farm kids like myself.
They were probably fascinated with automation.
They were not a college graduate in the bunch from the technician and supervisor level. Now they're engineers, obviously they were, but us guys that kept that thing running every day, we just farm kids knew how to work on tractors and balers and bush hogs and mowing machines and you name it because you had to.
If it was broke, you had to get it running. You had to get it fixed.
Yeah, and every one of those guys drove a minimum of 45 minutes to work one way.
Oh wow!
Every one of them, every one of us. So anyway, something to be said for farm kids.
Looks like we got some folks that went down memory lane with us here. So.
It's all right to get off the weeds every now and then.
Every once in a while.
We'll just go where it goes. There are a few people that shower more than once a week. It's all about having proper deodorant.
That's right.
Antiperspirant. That's beyond deodorant. That's the antiperspirant. When you start going a week without a shower, you better be wearing the right stuff. It's not just patchouli. You need the good stuff.
Yeah.
Gary said he ate mosquitoes. That's really living off the land right there.
I tell you what, Gary, you come over to my house. There's plenty of them in my house. You can eat all of them you want, buddy.
Pole Bender says his grandma hates that he bought bottled sweet tea. Man, we used to do the sun tea all the time.
Oh, yeah.
My mom would put a couple of Lipton tea bags and set it out on the front porch in the morning, and then in the about lunch. Well, actually about 3 or 4 or 5 o'clock, something like that.
We'd have tea.
We'd bring it in. We'd have tea.
Yep.
Add water to your liking.
Yep. You forget about these things if you don't talk about them.
You're exactly right. You're exactly right.
Daniel T said he's planted potatoes, beans, onions, cucumbers already this year.
We'll be over.
Gary said he ate caterpillars too. He's a trendsetter. That's kind of a little trend that was going on there a couple of years ago. People eating bugs and beetles and stuff. Phil wants to know: are most of your employees fishermen?
Most all of them are. Matter of fact, 2 years ago, on a Thursday at noon, I took every employee fishing. I bought them all a rod and reel. I bought them, every one of them, a fishing license for the year, and took them down, and we went fishing off the bank down at Pigeon Creek on North Fork, and had a great time. Everybody caught fish. It's when the Gem Shad first came out. I bought a bunch of Kitex and swim baits and took a bunch of Gem Shads down there and got everybody lined up and down the bank for a quarter mile and just had a blast. Everybody caught fish. And, but yeah, I think everybody that we've got there fishes. They're not, I've got 1, 2, 3, there's 4 of us that are avid tournament fishermen. But
we can't have too many avid tournament fishermen, or nothing would ever get done.
No, well, that's it. Somebody's got to work.
That's right.
And yeah, everybody fishes.
Daniel says it's a law in Kentucky. You have to have a bath at least once a year. See, that's the great thing about this live stream is we've got a lot of people on here, and they bring up these obscure laws that I had no idea, but it is a law in Kentucky.
That's interesting. Yeah, it's a law.
Thank God it's a law.
Thank you.
Gary ate bark too. Really living off the land. Scott says great show. Okay, well, it's been almost 2 hours, man. Time flies. It has been a blast.
It has been fun.
It really has. It's good to get to know you a little bit, and a lot of really good insider information. Thanks for sharing that. Anything else you want to bring up before we sign off?
Not really. Just want to thank you guys for this opportunity. I really appreciate it. It's I love this format. I've not done this before, strangely enough, but I like this. I like the questions. I like the interaction from viewers and those sort of things. So, but the invitation is open for you guys to come by. Love to show you around, take you out, have some of the best barbecue in the country. And let's see what we do. I think you'll be amazed and impressed really about, you didn't think about all these things when in just building a jig or building fishing tackle. It's a different way of looking at things.
Well, heck, Kevin said it here. Great show. Appreciate the American manufacturing. And I will second that. I don't do that for a living, but I mean, it's what built the backbone of this country, and we'll continue to grow with that. And there's not many of them left, so don't lose it for sure.
It'd be nice to be able to get back to that more.
100%.
And I think we have the desire. We'll see if we have the workforce to do that. But it would sure be nice to bring more of it back to America.
100% agree with you.
Yeah. I'm coming down, man. I'm coming down there.
Do that.
I got the invite.
You don't have to have clearance or whatever. You just tell me, hey, look, I'm on the way. So
okay.
Good.
Sounds good.
Because I missed Bull Shoals already. I had a lot of fun down there.
Well, I missed that trip.
Yeah, you got the invite too, but you couldn't make it.
I know.
We'll have to make it happen. Definitely have
Right.
to make it happen. Probably late this fall. I've heard rumor that there's a pretty good deep bite that happens on that lake in the fall. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
And there's a really good shallow bite whenever they drop that water down, the last 10 feet of water on Bull. That usually happens in August, early September. Just depends. Sometimes it'll go to 1st of October. But when they drop the last 10 feet out, you want to be there.
There's nothing wrong with 2 trips.
Yeah, we. I mean,
Between
it's
now
only
and then,
it's,
is
it's,
there?
it's 4
It's
hours.
not that far.
It's 4 hours.
He had me at barbecue. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, and it's only an hour till you get to the Ozarks, and it's 3 hours after that. So
Exactly.
There is a little bit of a windy road on the way. I'll just warn you. There's
Just a
about
little.
20 miles
There's
of
a-
hold your lunch down.
There's a good chance we might see a Sasquatch. Then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
So, all right. Well, we're going to sign off here.
All
Thanks
right,
again. Go check out Jewel Bait Company. Check out the Virtus rods. Really nice rods. And once again, appreciate you coming on here and hanging out with us.
Man, I've loved it. So anytime, and y'all come see me. We'd love to have you down.
All
Sounds
right.
great.
Or over. I guess it's over. And
Over, down.
Down and over
Yeah.
a little bit, something like
Yeah.
that.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
right.
So,
Yeah.
all right. Thanks for
All right,
everybody
guys.
for jumping on here and hanging out with us tonight.